Hi, I'm Melissa Benoist. I am currently on the show Supergirl on the CW, and I am a survivor of domestic violence. I decided to share my experience with domestic violence as a part of my healing process, even though it took me years to kind of get to the decision of actually taking the step to share it and share it as publicly as I did. I felt like it was going to give me strength to close some of the doors of pain that I had been kind of ruminating in for a while. So I don't normally do things like this, but I've written something that I want to share. I'm going to read it out loud, and I'm quite nervous, so bear with me. The moments leading up to sharing my video were a gigantic roller coaster. It's terrifying. The stark truth is, I learned what it felt like to be pinned down and slapped repeatedly, punched so hard the wind was knocked out of me, dragged by my hair across pavement, head-butted, pinched till my skin broke, shoved into a wall so hard the drywall broke, choked. I learned to lock myself in rooms, but quickly stopped because the door was inevitably broken down. I learned not to value any of my property, replaceable and irreplaceable. I learned not to value myself. At the beginning of the relationship, I did sense an unease in myself. There was no way that I ever would have known or had been able to guess in my situation what was going to happen and how it was going to escalate. It felt very good how much he coveted me, how much he seemed to treasure who I was. But there were aspects of him as a person that I would clock, controlling behavior and not wanting me to wear certain things when we would go out, not wanting me to talk to people, extreme jealousy. In retrospect, I see that each red flag followed a very clear path on the way to things becoming violent, because violence is so often preceded by mental, emotional, verbal, and psychological abuse, which are all very sneaky things. I can't even remember the circumstances of the first argument that led to something physical, but he threw something at my face. He threw a smoothie at my face, and it hit my face, and I just was so stunned that it had happened. And I know a lot of women talk about this. A lot of people that have been in violent relationships talk about the first time that it happens, you just write it off. It wouldn't be easy to describe in detail the physical arguments that occurred more and more after that. It's hard to even articulate. Not just because of the anger and the pain that surfaces, but because the memories feel like they took place on a different planet where I was breathing different air and witnessing a macabre secret I could never tell anyone I had seen. There was this ritual almost that would happen where something would click and he would immediately see what he had done and somehow start to think reasonably, and then usually pick me up, put me in the bathtub, and turn the water on. He'd kneel next to the tub crying self-hating tears with me. He never made me feel like he thought I deserved the beating, which I guess eased my mind. So I'd pull down the drain in the bathtub, and down the pipes the argument would go with its indecency, humiliation, sorrow, rage, and myself. I went down that drain every time he put me in the tub. It's a big, complicated mess of feelings that really, and you know, there's that confusion of love and almost that Stockholm Syndrome-esque feeling, this bubble you put yourself in that no one could possibly understand, and you do care for this person, and you make yourself believe that you have to stay or they'll hurt even more than you hurt. Months and months of this routine passed, and sometimes there wouldn't be a physical argument for a month or two, and I would distrustingly rejoice in the peace, thinking maybe it's actually different now. And things were different, but not for the better. I developed an astonishing poker face, but inwardly I was the ugliest version of myself I had ever known. I became unreliable, unprofessional, sometimes unreachable. There were stretches of weeks where I wouldn't get out of bed for more than 2 hours a day. I just made excuse after excuse after excuse. You get into this habit of excusing everything and lying, essentially. I became a very good liar to people that I really loved and had never lied to before. And then he threw something at my face again, only this time it was significantly worse. It was a blow to my face with his iPhone. The impact tore my iris, nearly ruptured my eyeball, lacerated my skin, and broke my nose. My left eye swelled shut, I had a fat lip, blood was coursing down my face, and I can remember immediately screaming at the top of my lungs. It was a pretty bad injury, and this eye is not going to recover, and my vision is still pretty blurry, and it's very weird in low light, and my pupil was dilated for a really long time after. After it happened, complete stillness blanketed the room. We panicked. He put me in the bath time, but this time that wouldn't be enough. This wasn't going to be easy to hide, let alone fix, and something inside of me broke. This was too far. I couldn't flush this one down with the tug of the drain. We made up a flimsy story together. I had tripped and fallen on the stairs of our deck and hit my face on a potted plant. We called our mothers, all of my representatives, who then had to call producers and directors I was working with. He drove me to the hospital. There were police officers at the hospital and doctors. The doctors had all pulled me aside and made him leave the room, and so many people had asked me what the origin of the injury was, and I stuck to the story, and I stuck to the story really well. And emotionally after that, I was done. I keenly felt that whatever I thought love was, it certainly wasn't what I had been going through. I was so tired of living the way I'd been living, but it felt too late to get out, and I was ashamed. But abuse doesn't just affect the people that are in its chokehold, however. And unbeknownst to me, many people in my life suspected and feared exactly what was happening. A friend visited me where I was working. My abuser wasn't there, so she had a rare opportunity to talk to me without his looming presence. It's one of the bravest things I've ever seen anyone do, and she was terrified to ask me about it. She was shaking and thought our friendship was going to be over, and because she didn't know if I would get mad at her or lash out or anything. And she just asked me point blank, and it was as if these floodgates opened, and the relief I felt at someone acknowledging it and someone almost giving me a pass. That was the turning point for me. If you know someone that you suspect is going through that, or if you see something, you can do something about it, and it will change someone's life. The violence I endured, and yes, even tolerated, the lies I told, the protection I gave my abuser, these facets all paint the dark and sinister portrait of that time of my life. But recusing those habits and breaking that cycle was the most rewarding, empowering choice I have ever made for myself. I feel an enduring strength and self-assurance that has dug its roots deep within me. The healing process was and has been a lot of therapy and a lot of self-reflection and crying and reading, and just I still come up against obstacles, and that's normal, and whenever I do, I cross that bridge when I come to it. Here's the irony about enduring an ordeal like a violent relationship. Inevitably, while terrible and irreparable damage is done to you, you build an impenetrable strength without realizing it. Right after I posted my story and my video, it was a lot of people saying I'm a survivor too, and I got out, and I'm a childhood survivor. A parent of mine was, people I'd worked with, It's so many more people than you realize have experienced some sort of domestic violence. If you are enduring what I went through and you see this, maybe you will find this tiny straw that will break the camel's back. Or at least you might begin to think of your freedom, in which case I am here. I am with you. I think I'd want to share with women today that are experiencing it now, especially during this pandemic, that there is help out there. People do care. Just because it might feel like you are more trapped than ever, and like it's worse than it's ever been, but it is possible, and you deserve to have a different life and to find love that doesn't hurt you and that exists.